Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to my raw, uncut channel that has many different topics. And you should stick around and check out the older videos because they're pretty cool too, even though I don't have this, slightly slightly professional microscope. But nonetheless, there's some interesting stuff there. And, some of those videos will make you go, wow, that really helped. I should send this guy a tip through the links below in the about section. I should certainly like and subscribe and hit that bell because it's always fun to hear a bell ding. Wish I could make it gong like Big Ben, but I can't. Just think it though. Manifestation time. Anyway, sorry, reflux. Something that I wanted to talk about that I've seen mentioned a few times in the comments, and it's something that is, fairly common in narcissistic abuse recovery communities, and that is victims that are, saying to themselves, well, am I a narcissist too? And the short answer is a very short word that a certain personality type called ENFJs have trouble saying, and it's no! No, you're not a narcissist. Why? Well, for one, you are questioning that. You're wondering. You're like, wow, is there something I can't see? Is there something wrong with me? Could I be misreading all these signs? And, could I be the one mistreating people? And the answer again is no. Why, you ask? Well, because that right there, in short, tells you you're not a narcissist. Because the narcissist will never, ever think there's something wrong with them. Because in their eyes, they're perfect. It's not, in their eyes, they can never be the problem. So the fact that you're doubting yourself and wondering proves right there that no, you are not the issue. It gets deeper than that, as most things do, especially if it's an INFJ talking. So, why do you think you may be a narcissist? Well, for one, if you are the scapegoat or the target or the black sheep of a narcissist, you've been told for years and probably decades that you are the problem. And not only was the narcissist been doing this, twisting your words, lying, gaslighting you, but they have their circle of enablers doing it too. So, they try to drill that in your head. So when you got like say 10 people ganging up on you and you're by yourself, they're going to convince you that you're the problem. And sadly enough, and I've recently learned this, and you should know this too, is that there's probably a lot of people who can see like how poorly you're being treated. They can see it, but they're afraid to say anything. So that further ingrains that, well, I must be the problem because there's these people that are backing up the narcissist claims that I'm the problem, and nobody's backing me up, or at best somebody will whisper in your ear when no one's looking, but there's really, and a lot of times, nobody willing to call the narcissist out to their face. And I always wondered, like, why not? What's the problem? You're just scared. What can they do? Oh, they can twist words and, well, not, I don't know about get you in trouble, but they'll damn near, they'll try every trick they have, trust me. But that does weigh on you, that constant barrage of the narcissist telling you that you're the problem and those enablers backing them up. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with just your intuition like, no, I know it's not me, damn it. I know it, but they keep telling me. It's like, could I be wrong? Just maybe. And that's part of it. Another part of it is the effect, and I'll have to do a separate video on this too. The effect of, oh yeah, and by the way, if I ever say I'm going to do a separate video on this and don't get around to it, put in the comments and remind me, because I have every intention of doing it, but I have a lot going on, so topics come and go out of my mind. Sometimes I have, like a great video that'll get 1,000 views in a couple hours, but I don't have the time to sit down and do it. And then by the time I do have the time to sit down and do it, I don't remember what I was going to say. I remember the topic, but not what I was going to say. Anyway, another big reason of why, a victim of narcissistic abuse may be questioning if they are a narcissist or not is based on narcissistic tendencies. And this is especially true for, those of us that endured narcissistic abuse as children, typically by our parents, because, that's like a daily thing as opposed to from, a relative you see like once a month. And it goes with narcissistic tendencies. Well, here's the hard truth, everybody, because you may be thinking, well, I'm looking at this and I forget how many of the criteria is in the DSM of the narcissistic criteria to technically be a narcissist. I forget, but I think it's 5 or 7. Not sure. Anyway, you may be looking at that list going, well, I have a couple of these. Well, here's the truth. Everybody has some narcissistic tendencies. You do. Everybody. And yes, it's sad but true, but those of us that were raised by narcissists are going to have a little more, at least as children. Why, you may ask? Because that's normal to us. If you're raised by a narcissist, I was raised by a borderline, but they share a lot of the same traits. And my mom had narcissistic tendencies on top of the BPD. Anyway, and my dad was, he was working at the nuclear plant like 12-hour shifts. So, my dad was around. I had a dad, but especially when I was young, he was one of those dads who was always at work, especially if he was on 12-hour night shifts. Then I basically didn't see him until his day off, because 7 p to 7 a, and then he'd come sleep. And if we woke him up, my brother and I woke him up playing, that didn't end well. Yeah, he worked 12 hours, and then him and his buddies went to the bar. And yes, there were bars right by the nuclear plant that were open for the third shift workers. It was some straight up 90s Simpsons stuff. My dad shares a lot of similarities with Homer Simpson, except he had an above average IQ. But his drinking habits, eating habits, physique, the way he would fall asleep at any given second. Oh yeah, Homer Simpson to the core. We even dressed as the Simpsons one Halloween when I was in elementary school at the height of Simpsons popularity, in the straight up like radiation suits. We won. Another story. Anyway, back to my point. Narcissistic tendencies, because the person raising you, the person, the adult who you have the most interaction with, who's teaching you right from wrong, or should be, is using those tactics, those tendencies. So to the child being raised by the narcissist, that becomes normalized. You think, well, gee, that my mother's doing this, like, that's supposed to be who's teaching me, that's who teaches me right from wrong, how to do things. This must be what's normal. So I should try to emulate this. And remember, I'm not talking teen, I'm talking like single digit age. So you go through life thinking that's how you're supposed to act. And especially if you're being told that's what's normal and that's what you're supposed to do. It's not till you reach like puberty when you start to realize like, that don't seem right. There's something wrong here. This isn't normal. Or, especially like middle school, because you start hanging out at other kids' houses more. And when I mean like other than kids in your neighborhood. Like you're hanging out at your friends' houses and they're friends of yours that like your parents aren't necessarily friends with their parents, kind of thing. Get it? So then you're seeing those families interact, and it's like, I always knew something was up with my family. Now I have the proof. This is normal and this is nice. Adopt me. But regardless, those tendencies become normalized to you. So at younger ages, you tend to emulate them. And because, it's not like everybody has some narcissistic tendencies naturally just by the way they think. But if you're constantly around that environment, constantly in that chaos, to a degree, it becomes normalized as you become desensitized to it. I remember, a lot of my families like this. We were up, we have relatives like 2 hours away, relatives that on my mother's side that, she grew up with in Coatesville. And we were up there for some reason, like the whole like big family, and it was also like all my Gen X cousins that are like 10, 12 years older than me. It was in the 90s. So we're down in the basement. Me and my cousin at the time were close. She's only a year younger than me. And we were playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. And the boomers, something, you could hear like an argument brewing. The Gen Xers were downstairs with us because they were teenagers at the time. And there was like a bumper pool and a dartboard and, a fridge full of beer. So they were down there, they were down there too, smoking cigarettes. And a lot of them had their significant others. And, the guys were winning points with their girlfriends by seeing, how good they were with the little kids. That always works, at least from what I've seen. Babies are the best. Babies love me. And I love babies. But regardless, at the time, the big kids, the Gen Xers, they're taking turns, they're playing Super Nintendo with us, and oh, look how great we are. And then all of a sudden, I distinctly remember my one cousin. She was like, I don't know, 17 or 18 at the time, and her long-term boyfriend, who's actually now my boss at my side job, because him and I have remained friends. That's another story. Anyway, they were getting real close, getting ready to leave the college. They were going to live together, and all of a sudden, oh, hell breaks loose upstairs. And I mean, screeching, screaming, and yelling at each other, and, accusations and threats. And all of a sudden, this guy's name was Rich. He looked terrified. He was white as a ghost. Those of us, in the family were just, didn't phase us. We're just like, yep, here they go again. It's like, come on, Luigi, get the feather. Yeah. Ooh, Yoshi. Yeah, we just kept playing, and he's like, thinking this is some like epic fight. Like, oh my God, this never happens. No, that was normal for us. That's what I mean. Stuff like that became normal, and it got worse when you get a bunch of them together. But it becomes, that's why I told the story. Those things become normalized, and you become desensitized to it. And I remember looking over at him. I'm like, you sure you want to hang around this family? It's like, I was born in this viper's nest. You chose to be here. Why? He eventually did get out because my cousin cheated on him with his best friend and college roommate, because they decided not to live together. Although they did live together, they went to the shore and lived together over the summer and both got jobs down there. But regardless, typical my family move. That's what they are. That's what they do. One's on this side of the Atlantic anyway. But yeah, it becomes normalized. You become desensitized to it. So know that, if you're exhibiting tendencies, that everybody has some narcissistic tendencies, and to have a couple is normal, but you should be able, like us victims, we recognize when that part of us comes out, like, ooh, this isn't right. I'm not acting appropriately to the situation. Like, I have to pull back. The narcissist thinks that it's like, of course I'm entitled to do this. Like, I'm me. That kind of stuff. And there's a difference too, victims, between having a few narcissistic tendencies that manifest from time to time, as opposed to being a full-blown narc, or B, someone who's like a borderline narc. Like, for example, if the DSM criteria is you must have 5 of these traits and the person has 4, that's different. Everybody has 1 or 2. That manifests from time to time. It's not like it's something you struggle with daily. There can be certain things that trigger at certain environments. That's normal. Just remember, you are a victim, not the narcissist. Yes, you have those traits. Everybody does. Yes, victims that were raised, people that were raised by narcs, we have a little bit more of those tendencies, at least at first, but we recognize that it's wrong, and we do what we can to not exhibit those traits and to hold it back and to reel it in when they do come out. We know it's not normal. We know it's wrong, and we're trying to break that pattern of narcissistic behavior. Whereas the narcissist, A, never will break that pattern, and B, can always justify those actions. So keep that in mind. You're a victim, not a narcissist. The true narcissist will never question whether or not they are a narcissist. They'll lose their shit when you call them a narcissist. I've done it. I talk all the time about calling narcs out. Like, yeah, I recently called a covert narc out just a few months ago. Called her the queen of everything. She lost her shit. I got a phone call from the cops for calling somebody out. It's like, oh, no contact. I'm like, she went out of her way to find me and yell at me all the time. Well, I'm like, I didn't know it was right to call somebody a narcissist. I'm not in any trouble, but they don't like knowing somebody else knows. Yeah, so be aware of that. But a narcissist cannot face the fact that they're a narcissist, and they'll lose it, especially if deep down they may know, but they're always able to justify that behavior. The rules are always different for them. It's always okay when they do it. You can do something one day, and then the very next day, a narcissist can do the exact same thing, and it's justified. And it always will be in their mind, because they're them and you're you. I'm going to say it one more time. you're a victim and not a narcissist. So trust your intuition about, what's an occasional narcissistic tendency response. Recognize it, know that it's inappropriate, and know what triggered it. And that's what everybody has to do. Do not question your integrity just because you exhibit some narcissistic tendencies, particularly if you grew up in that environment and it was normalized to you, at least for a time. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can know when I randomly post things, because I do it when I have time. There's no set schedule or set topics. And if you really want to be cool, there's an about section that's kind of fun to read, and some links to 3 different apps, and any one of them can send me a little money, and put a smile on my face, because I don't smile much these days with all I got going on. Just saying. But I'll see you next time. Sadly, we are all victims of the same horrid behavior, but I guess it's better to be a victim than to be an abuser, because the abuser does it by choice. The victim, we were chosen, and it's not our fault. Many times they took away our free will.